Okay, so mobile payments. Everybody's interested in mobile payments. Everybody makes mobile payments. These days, you're all carrying around a device which ultimately has the capability of making mobile payments either by scanning QR codes or with NFC or stuff like that. So everybody's fascinated by it, and we need to talk about it. And we will extensively. So here's the motivation. The motivation is everybody has a cell phone. Even people in the world, there are people in the world who don't have a bank account, but they have a cell phone. Even in undeveloped countries, they have cell phones. It's a mechanism that they use for communicating, and also they use for paying. But how do you make a payment if you don't even have a bank account? Well, we'll talk about it. But this is the world mobile payment volume. These are the value in US dollars of payments made by mobile devices in the world. And right now, in 2018, it's predicted to be almost $1 trillion US, 930 billion. But in 2019, it's projected to go over $1 trillion. And I think it's probably going to be higher than that, because this looks like a small jump considering all of the developments that have been made in mobile payment. $1 trillion, $1 trillion. That's a lot of money, but banks interchange $7 trillion a day. So it's 1/7 of a day's bank transfers. But remember that mobile payments, almost all of them are small in value. You don't go buy a Rolls Royce with a mobile payment. You're buying consumer goods. And so having a total of $1 trillion in consumer goods, that's a lot of money. All right. The history of mobile payment. What do you know? Look at Coca-Cola Company, our friends from the statistical micropayment. Whoever thought that Coca-Cola would be an innovator in payment systems? Yet they were. In 1997, Coca-Cola introduced a vending machine that accepted a payment via text message. So if you had SMS, that you could text something to Coca-Cola, and that would pay for your Coke, and the Coke would be dispensed. Very cute. Nobody remembers that. I don't even remember that. It wasn't very popular, but at least it was an innovation. Now, you know that over the years, since the late 90s, so cell phones have been around for a long time, but they were used for talking. Smartphones, in which there was actually a computer on the phone, came later. And of course, as you've seen, the developments have been tremendous. The iPhone 10, the senior vice president of Apple, who's responsible for hardware, came to Carnegie Mellon to try to recruit students, to convince them that Apple was a good place to work, etc. And he came right after the introduction of the iPhone 10. And he was responsible for the hardware design of the circuit on there, circuit board. And he explained that there are over 4 billion transistors on an iPhone. Now, when I started working for IBM in 1968, they were just starting to put more than one chip on what they called a substrate. This is something that you could actually plug into a circuit board. And IBM was excited to put 3 transistors on one chip. Now there are 4 billion, 1 billion times more. And so you can see that the processing capabilities of these devices, basically a cell phone now, has more computing power than all of the computers in the world in 1968. Whatever you're holding has more computing power than that. And so we can do a lot of things. But that developed slowly over a period of decades. So cell phones were used to buy movie tickets for the first time in 1999. Then Merita Bank was the first bank, 1997, that allowed bank transactions via text messaging. So this is very crude. Your phone isn't doing any processing. All it's doing is sending some data to the bank, right? And there's very little security associated with that, except possibly the SIM card in your cell phone. So in the year 2000, cell phones could be used to book airline flights on KLM. Then Domino's Pizza, which was a popular pizza chain in the US, started accepting payment via mobile devices only in 2001. So 2001 was right after our e-business program started. And there was almost no such thing as mobile payment then. Now it's become more and more and more and more important. There were 95 million people making mobile payments in 2003, 15 years ago. Then the first iPhone was released in 2007, and that's what really started things going with mobile payment. So everything depends on cell phone penetration. That is, what percentage of people in the world have mobile phones? And it's estimated by the end of next year, 2019, that 5.6 billion people in the world will have cell phones. Well, there are only 7.3 or so billion people in the world total. So it's only a little over a billion people left who won't have cell phones. By contrast, 2 billion people in the world have credit cards. That means that, and right now, 4 billion have mobile phones. That means that there are 2 billion people that have, possibly, depending on the set intersection. I'm assuming that everybody who has a credit card has a mobile phone. That means there are 2 billion people that have mobile phones that don't even have a credit card. And there are many of those people that don't even have a bank account. And so a very important usage of mobile phones is allowing people who don't have credit cards or bank accounts to make payments. That's critical for the functioning of an economic society. If you have people who don't have a means of payment, then obviously it's restricting the ability of merchants to grow in that country. It's also restricting the ability of those people to buy necessary things, which they were previously presumably doing by barter or cash, which means that to use cash, you have to physically go to the place where you're buying something. And that restricts the radius within which you can buy things. On the other hand, if you can buy things with your mobile phone, then you can buy things from far away. You don't have to physically go there and hand cash to the merchant. So it's of great importance in third world countries. Now, 80% of people in the world, and this is a sort of a surprise, do not have a bank account. If you don't have a bank account, you can't write checks, you can't send credit transfers, you can't ask your bank to pay a bill. How do you pay a bill if you don't have a bank account? You go up to a kiosk with the bill, and you hand cash to an agent, and that agent represents a number of billers, for example, your electric company, the phone company, or whatever, and that's how people pay their bill. Now, that's a tremendous waste of time. To actually have to physically go to a place, have enough cash, and hand the cash to an agent to pay a bill is a horrible waste. If you have a mobile phone, you don't have to do any of that, because most of the people who don't have bank accounts, other than the ones who are totally disenfranchised, have mobile phones. So mobile payment is important, not just technologically, but economically important for the world. This chart shows the growth of online banking, which is banking via desktop computers, and mobile banking, which is banking via your mobile phone. Okay, so they're distinct. Now, some people do both. So this is in the United States. This is millions of US households that conducted online banking in 2005. 40 million households did it over the internet. But 0.1 million, which is 100,000. 100,000 households did it by mobile banking. It's so small that if they drew the blue line, you couldn't even see it there. Now, as you can see, what's happening is, while the number of households that do online banking is increasing slowly, the number of households that do mobile banking is increasing faster. And so what happens here is it's predicted by 2025 that mobile will exceed online. Well, why is this? Mobile devices in general are more capable in terms of processing power than even laptops. This is a brand new, wonderful Lenovo laptop, but the processing power of my Android phone is greater than that one. It is. Why? Because mobile phones are pretty expensive. I mean, supposedly there's a new mobile phone coming out that costs more than $1,000 US. And they don't make people pay for that. What they do is they stuff it into your monthly telephone subscription fee. But you end up paying for very expensive processors. That iPhone 10 that I was telling you about has built-in neural network face recognition technology. It's built into the hardware. There's no neural network built into the hardware of this laptop. You know, this laptop costs a lot more than a cell phone. Why? Because you can make cell phones cheaper because the volume is so great. The total number of cell phones that are distributed now is greater than the number of laptops. And so the laptops, in proportion, cost more. But that's okay. CMU owns that one. I didn't have to pay for that one. And in fact, because I run the program, I can buy the most expensive laptop that I want. CMU still owns it. But that's okay. I get to use it. And when it's obsolete, they get it back again, and it's useless to them. All right. Now, how many retailers around will accept a mobile payment? You may have the capability of making a mobile payment because you have a mobile phone, but if the merchant won't take the mobile payment, it doesn't do you a lot of good. So what this is showing is in the year 2017, this was the percentage of merchants that accepted these various different kinds of mobile payment. And what this is showing is how many already accept Apple Pay. 36%, the ones polled. 22% were planned to accept it within 12 months. 11% planned to accept it within 1 to 3 years. And the rest, I'm not so sure. I'm going to wait and see. If my customers demand it, then maybe I will implement. And this goes all the way down. Now, here's Bitcoin even. There are 5% of retailers who plan to accept it within 12 months. But a vanishingly small, imperceptible number are actually already accepting Bitcoin. Now, of course, this is a problem because this space, this is too broad. What you would like is to have a very small number of payment mechanisms. Why? Because every one of these that exists, you have to learn some different way of using it. Merchants have to install different software to accept it. It's like credit cards. You don't want there to be 50 credit cards. It's not even so great that there's more than one, although you need competition. I grant that. But we have a small number of major credit cards, which varies around the world, but in any part of the world, there's only a small number of them. This is too much, and there's going to be shakeout here. Usually what happens is when banks do this, like Chase Manhattan Bank here, Chase Pay, it's usually a failure. They have a lot of money. They start out, and then banker head takes over, and they don't think in a forward-looking way. They think in a banker way, and other companies that think forward surpass them. That's my prediction, is that bank-branded mobile payment mechanisms are just not going to work. Not because of technology. Everybody has access to the same technology. You can buy employees. If you don't have the technology, you hire somebody from your competitor. It's not like there's some great secret that's built into these devices. All right. Now, proximity mobile payment. So proximity mobile payment is mobile payment via NFC, not via text. So you're familiar with it. They'll have a proximity payment point-of-sale device. When it comes time to pay, you just bring your phone near it, okay? And NFC takes over, RFID. So this is a map of China in millions of people. So this is measured in people. The black bars here are the number of proximity mobile payment users by year. So in 2017, to almost 250 million proximity payment users. These, of course, 2018 through 20 are predictions. What this is showing is the percent change. Okay? So in going from 63 to 134, that's 100 and something percent increase, 112.2% increase. The amount of increase, of course, is eventually going to have to go down. I mean, you can't double every year. Pretty soon you'll take over the entire Earth. It's not possible. And this is the number of smartphone users. So the number of smartphone users is going up slowly, like that. And then the number of people that are engaging in proximity mobile payment is increasing faster. And the reason for that is more mobile phones are coming that have NFC capability, and more merchants are accepting proximity payment. All right. I know this looks bad, right, when you see something going down like that. But remember, this is percentage increase. So as long as this is above 0, there's still an increase in the number of people who are using proximity payment. All right. This is, in US dollars, the cost of a transaction based on the channel by which the transaction is made. And by channel, I don't mean a TV channel or a digital channel. I mean the mode by which you make the payment. So it costs, if a person shows up at a physical booth and interacts with a human being, the total cost of that transaction is actually $4.25. And that includes the cost of the space that the bank has to allocate to that person, the person themselves, their salary and benefits, the lighting, the air conditioning, everything in the bank branch, plus all of the back-end processing that's required. Once there's a physical interaction between you and a bank teller, there are documents, there are entries that are made in a computer, and all of those have to go and get processed. It's very expensive. If you call a call center, it's much cheaper. The reason for that is they pay people at the phone center a lot less. Most of the phone centers are in India or in Bangalore. The way you typically know that is by the accent of the person that you're talking to. And it requires just much less overhead than running a bank. Because if you've ever seen a call center, it sort of looks like this. There's a whole bunch of carrels where people are sitting, and they have a very tiny space, and they sit there all day with a headset on, talking to people and keying stuff in. It's much cheaper. ATMs. The cost of an ATM transaction is approximately the same as the cost of a call center phone transaction. Why? Well, you don't have to pay a person at the ATM, but you have this worldwide private IP network that's in real time verifying that you have enough money in your bank account, etc. Then, of course, there's auditing that gets done of the ATM transactions, particularly deposits that are made. And so there are a lot of people involved in that. There are armed guards who go around filling the ATMs with money. There's a lot of money in an ATM because people are coming along all day taking it out, and somebody has to put it in. Now, online banking using a bank or credit union. So if you do online banking and you want to transfer money from one account to another, costs the bank about 19 US cents to do that. This is incredible compared to these other costs. It's a tenth of these or so, and a very, very small fraction of that. Mobile banking, on the other hand, transaction costs 10 US cents. Half the price of doing it through a desktop. And so this is responsible for the mobile payment trend. Two things. This is a general principle you should remember for the rest of your life. If there's something to be done that's good for me and good for you, it's going to happen. If I propose something that's only good for me and there's no benefit to you, it's very difficult for me to get you to go along with it. But if we both see mutual benefit to it, we're going to do it. That's what happened here. There's benefit to you with mobile payment because it's unbelievably convenient. You're carrying the device around with you all the time. Eventually, humans are going to be born. We're going to figure out a way, genetically, to create humans so they're born with a cell phone as part of their body. Because it's practically part of your body now. You feel totally lost without it. You can't conduct life without it. Okay? So it's good for you, and this shows why it's good for the bank. It's good for the payment system because it costs so little. That's the great thing about it. Ah, very interesting. I think by the end of this afternoon you'll know that. Okay? Yeah. It has a lot to do with the security mechanisms of the cell phones. Here you don't have that. I don't have on my laptop, I mean, I have some CMU digital certificates, but I don't have any banking digital certificates. So the process of authenticating me when I do a payment transaction is much more difficult on a desktop. and the risk associated with it is higher. Whereas authenticating you on your mobile phone is much easier. All right. So mobile is a very complicated space. Sometimes, so I like real simple slides with big letters and a few drawings on them so you can understand everything on the slide. Whenever I show you something that is so complicated that you can't possibly read it, there's only one purpose for my doing that, and that's to prove to you that it's complicated. I'm not expecting you to memorize all of the providers of e-wallets, all of the gateway providers, and all that stuff. What I'm showing you is that there are different parties involved in mobile payment that have different functions. That we can talk about. So this is the payment ecosystem. So these are the guys who actually process payments. This is not a list of all of them, obviously. These are mobile merchant providers. So these provide services to merchants, including devices to merchants that merchants can use for accepting online payments. These guys provide point-of-sale terminals. These guys are gateways between the merchants and payment networks. These guys are payment processors. These are acquirers of transactions. These are the card associations. These are bank credit card issuers. And these are e-wallet providers. All of these folks have a role in mobile payment, and I haven't even shown you the telephone companies. Telephone companies are deeply involved in mobile payment because they're providing the network that you use to gain access to the internet. Just the mobile wallet space is huge. So a wallet, of course, it's the analog to your physical wallet. So the physical wallet contains a wide variety of payment devices. Most of the payment devices have exactly the same size and shape. They're the size of a credit card. Even the Octopus card. Note, credit card, Octopus card. Credit card, Octopus card. They have the same form factor because that's what you're used to. Wallets, physical wallets are actually made, they have inserts in them that are credit card size inserts. If I made something that was bigger than that, it wouldn't fit in the wallet. And if I made it smaller, it would fall out. Okay? So that's what a wallet is. It contains a large number of payment devices. Well, an e-wallet is the same thing, except it doesn't have physical cards, and they don't have the same physical size because they don't have any physical size. But it's a way of holding your payment credentials. So when you want to pay, you can have a choice of what mechanism you want to use to pay. If you only had one, you wouldn't need a wallet. Right? If I only had one credit card, I would just keep it in my pocket. But I want to keep 10 in my pocket because it'd be difficult to locate the one that I want. Okay? So all of these guys provide mobile wallets. Now, they're not all going to survive. This space is just much too populated for all of these guys to be successful. And so there'll be a shakeout, and eventually they're going to disappear. All right. What are the advantages of mobile payment? Basically, the advantage is you've always got the mobile device there. In the old days, when people paid by check, they had to have their checkbook. If they walked out of their house without their checkbook, they couldn't write a check. Yeah, you can write a check on any piece of paper you want. You don't need a printed one from the bank. What's the chance the merchant will accept a check that's written on a blank piece of paper? Even though it's legal, they just won't accept it. Then, when we went to online payment, you had to be at your desktop or at your laptop. If you were somewhere like in a store, and you weren't going to get out your laptop and try to find a wireless network and get on. So I'm talking about what fraction of the day do you have a payment mechanism available to you? It's highest with mobile payment. Because you're so wedded to your cell phone, you can't live without it. And if the cell phone is there, you can always make a payment. So many payments occur during the day. You pay for commuting. You pay for information access. Right? I know, yeah. The Google search is free, right? But at home, you have to have an ISP. And if you have a mobile phone, your mobile provider is your ISP. Don't you pay a monthly fee for that? It's not free. So you're paying all the time for all kinds of services. Buying food, playing games, getting access to sports events, paying people in a peer-to-peer manner, etc. The evolution, this is sort of like the evolution of humans coming out of the muck and learning to stand upright and using their opposable thumbs and stuff. So the very primitive methods of making payment were cash and checks. Then in the 70s, we went to the magnetic stripe card, as we talked about. Much more recently, the contactless chip card. This is RFID, and chip-based cards that actually have a chip that's readable by the point-of-sale terminal. And now, over the air. So OTA is the abbreviation we're going to use, everybody does, this afternoon, with respect to things that are going on in the mobile space. So OTA means something that's going on over the air, that is, between your mobile phone and the cell phone tower. And then from the cell phone tower, typically most things are going over landlines from there, copper or optical. But at least there's some component that's going on over the air. And paying for parking and buying stuff at vending machines, peer-to-peer payment, ticketing, including buying the ticket. Then the ticket is downloaded to your cell phone. And to get into the event, you just have the scanner scan your cell phone. So the ticket becomes an information good. It's not even a physical piece of paper. All right. There are different words used for the range, which means the distance between you and the thing that's processing the payment. So the touch range is less than a meter. So this occurs with near-field communication and RFID, which are essentially the same thing, although NFC is replacing RFID, because RFID sounds like identification, and that's what it was originally. Whereas near-field communication simply means exchanging data between two things that are close. So the touch zone is this less than a meter range. Then there's the personal zone, which is like the area around you that you can see relatively easily, so you know who's within that radius. The personal zone, 1 to 10 meters is the range of Bluetooth. That's the Bluetooth standard, by the way. It's supposed to be readable at 10 meters. Then the local area zone is 10 meters to 100 meters range, typically Wi-Fi. So wireless LAN, but not cell phone tower. You know, you're rarely within 10 meters of a phone tower. Down in central, most of the time you're probably within 100 meters of a cell tower. But in most areas of the world, you're not. So any idea, by the way, what the range of coverage of a cell phone tower is? Suppose you had completely flat terrain with no buildings in the way at all, no mountains or anything. How far away can you be from a cell tower and still receive cell phone service? Any idea about that? It's much more. Yeah, much more. His guess was 3 kilometers. No. Easily 100 kilometers. If you're in the desert, for example, where there's nothing in the way, it's no problem. All right? The wide or metro area zone, greater than 100-meter range, these are various relatively high-speed digital communication mechanisms. And then, of course, the broadcasting zone, greater than 10 kilometers. That's where you have powerful transmitters and receivers. Okay. So IP services and IP mobility now are essentially the same thing. Anything that I can get on my laptop through the internet, I can get it on my Android phone also. They're essentially indistinguishable, except the mobile phone I can put in my pocket, and I can't put the laptop in my pocket. You might wonder, why do I use a laptop at all? It's because I can't stand the interface to the cell phone. I cannot type as fast with thumbs as I can with the keyboard. But that's just me, because I didn't learn that as a fundamental skill as an infant. Now infants know how to do that, and I don't. I don't even like it. All right. I'm going to give you 2 meta principles about mobile payment. Mobile payment seems like all kind of magic. It's not really. The fundamental purpose of mobile payment is for you to send a payment order to somebody. And when you're sending a payment order, the recipient doesn't care how it came. You can send it over the internet, you can send it over the internet through the air. It doesn't make any difference. It's just for sending payment orders. You're not sending money, you're sending payment orders. Okay? However, it's a key difference between sending a payment order by mobile phone and by other mechanisms has to do with the level of security and authentication. Cell phones provide a tremendous level of authentication that other mechanisms do not. And that's what all the work is in mobile payment. Yeah, there are a variety of clever ways of you interacting with the merchant, like with a QR code or barcode or something like that. That's all clever, but the purpose of that is simply to cause a payment order to be transmitted. What's really different is the security. All right, so let's look at how a mobile payment works. Step one, here's you. You're the buyer. You have a mobile phone. You want to buy something from a merchant, which means you're going to have to pay for it. So first, there's an identity exchange. The merchant sees that he's talking to a device that is actually an authorized device that's capable of making a payment. Your device verifies that it's talking to a legitimate merchant who has some kind of point-of-sale device which knows the right protocol to talk to your phone. You can think of this as something like the Octopus mutual authentication, where the card verifies that the reader is legitimate, the reader verifies the card is legitimate. That's what goes on here. Then, when you have told the merchant everything you want to buy, the merchant adds up the quantity, that's the clearing. He clears, and then he sends you a bill. So it might appear on this little thing here, right? There's a little display on his point-of-sale terminal, where an LCD display that shows you how many Hong Kong dollars it's going to be. That's nice for your eyes, but that doesn't do much for your cell phone. Your cell phone needs to know the number, because the cell phone is going to communicate with a payment provider to cause the payment to be made to the merchant. So a bill of some kind is then transmitted from the merchant's device to your cell phone. So now your cell phone knows the amount. It also knows the credentials of the merchant, who it is that's supposed to be paid. You may know that in your head, but that doesn't help your cell phone. Okay? Now, the bill is sent, first of all, it's encrypted and signed by the merchant. So, of course, you know it's legitimate because you're standing there. But when that bill gets sent to your payment provider, he needs to know that the bill is legitimate. And so that's why it's digitally signed by the merchant. That's in step two, it's digitally signed. It's forwarded to a trusted server, and it's encrypted again by your phone. Your phone uses a negotiated symmetric key to do that. And the reason for that is we don't want people listening in on it. We don't want people altering it. And furthermore, the trusted server, in order to trust you, needs to authenticate you. It needs to know that you knew the correct symmetric key. All right. Then, of course, at the trusted server, there are various payment credentials that are being held, possibly. And there's a payment response from the trusted server, which is going to be encrypted with a symmetric key, that sends back an outcome. And the outcome is, oh, yes, he had enough credit on that credit card. We are going to pay you, or you're going to get paid. That outcome is forwarded to the merchant. Then, ultimately, the merchant gets in contact with his bank. He uploads the transactions later, just like in the credit card model. And he's going to get paid because the trusted server has communicated with his bank that there's an authorization that the merchant has obtained. So this is one model. I mean, this is not the way all mobile payments take place. But one thing that you can see already from this is by the use of this cryptography, by digitally signed messaging and the use of symmetric keys, that this is a high security application. And it has to be high security. One of the things is with wireless devices, it's very easy to listen in on the bits that are being transmitted. If the cell tower can hear you, then Eve can hear you too. This is not exactly so easy with a hardwired local area network. Yes, you can tap into it, but there are LAN segments on the local area network. So if I tap in here, I'm not hearing any communications that are going on in the next classroom. I'm only getting what's coming out of this desktop. Whereas if I have a wireless receiver, I'm receiving everything everybody in the neighborhood is sending. And so the need for security is greater in the mobile context. All right. So where do payment credentials get stored? So in this previous one, the credentials were being stored on your trusted server. So you have a subscription. There's a payment provider. You've loaded up all your credentials on there. Example, Amazon.com. You go to Amazon.com, you can load into Amazon a whole bunch of credit cards that you have. You can use them for buying stuff on Amazon, or through using Amazon Pay, you can charge any of those credit cards, and they will process the payment. So the credentials are on their server. But that doesn't always have to be the case. They can be in the phone itself. You can have your payment credentials in a micro SD card, a SIM card, or already embedded in the phone. You can store payment credentials in the cloud, or some combination of both, where some are on the phone, some are in the cloud. The Amazon situation I was telling you about, you can think of that as being in the cloud, because, of course, Amazon literally does store everything in the cloud. They store it in their own cloud, in the Amazon Web Services cloud. All right. Square, very cute. Brilliant, brilliant invention. They made a fortune on this one. Normally, if you were a merchant and you wanted to take credit cards, you'd go to your bank. You say, I want to take credit cards. They would do a credit check on you. Yes. You have to do a credit check on the guy who's receiving the money. You wouldn't, that's not obvious that you would do that. When there's credit card fraud, usually the dollar value of it is much greater when it's committed by a merchant than by an individual. Why? Because the total credit limit that an individual has is limited. An individual, it would be rare to have more than $1 million credit line, and that's a big credit line, Hong Kong, big credit line. Whereas merchants regularly receive tens of millions of dollars a day in payments from credit card companies. And so when a merchant fakes transactions, the dollar value is much greater. And what can merchants do? One thing a merchant can do is put through a bunch of fake credit card transactions, wait till he gets the money, which is usually in a day or two, and then close down his operation and vanish. Take the money and go. And the credit card company has no recourse unless they can track him down in another country or wherever he's gone. And when he leaves, he doesn't just take $1 million with him. He takes tens of millions with him. So for you to accept credit cards, you have to pass a rigorous credit check with your bank. All right. Then what they're going to do is give you a point-of-sale terminal that's capable of accepting credit cards. Well, that's a physical device that sits on your counter, and it's wired into some computer, which is then wired into, or at least over the internet, or some network, to an acquirer. All right, fine. Now suppose that you want to set up a kiosk somewhere. You want to go to a flea market, or you want to set up a pop-up store. Where are you going to set up a point-of-sale terminal? That takes a lot of overhead to get that thing and make all the telephone connections, et cetera. So there were many merchants who were mobile. There are guys who come to your house and do repairs. How do you pay them? They can't have a point-of-sale terminal because they don't have any physical wireline connection. So Square shows up and says, you know what? What do these point-of-sale terminals do? All they do is read a mag stripe off of a card. And how many bytes are there on a mag stripe? Why don't we convert an ordinary cell phone into a mag stripe reader? Well, now all of a sudden, any merchant anywhere can take credit cards as long as he's within cell tower radius, as long as he can get 4G, 3G even, any Android or iPhone. And the cleverness of this was they made this little reader. It fit into the microphone jack on your phone, because phones don't have USB ports. Now they have micro USB, but they didn't originally. So you just stick this in your microphone jack, and now there's all kinds of capability that becomes now greater than you ever had with an ordinary point-of-sale terminal. For one thing, you can capture the signature right on the phone. So when the thing is swiped, what Square does is they'll send back a merchant-branded screen. It tells you your amount, and it accepts your signature written by your fingernail or whatever. Look how easy it is to add a tip. They've added that in there. It's very convenient. Somebody asked me before how tip processing occurs. So you go to a restaurant. They give you the bill. You pay by credit card. You know they've put that transaction through. You know they've gotten authorization, right, through the process of the card association network. Then they come back to the table with the receipt. And there's an opportunity for you to add a tip. Well, if you add a tip, that's by handwriting. It's with a pen and ink. And you add a new total up and you sign it. Well, now how does the merchant get that extra money for the tip? They have to go back to their point-of-sale terminal, and they have to manually enter the tip amount, so it's going to get added to the transaction. So it's a two-phase process. First is the bill, then the second is the tip. Here, with Square, it's all in one. You get this, $11.50. No, there's been no authorization yet. You get this amount. You add a tip. Let's say you add $1.50. Now you got $13. That's what goes through for authorization. Goes through only once and requires no work on the part of the merchant. Then you get a receipt that gets stored on your phone. The receipt shows the amount that you paid, what you bought, 2 cappuccinos and caramels, and even a nice little map that shows you where the merchant was and his name and address. And a copy of the signature that you gave. So later on, if there's any discrepancy, you've got a transaction receipt that shows the whole thing. Now, yeah, in a certain sense, you get that on a piece of paper when you go to a restaurant. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Do you still have your receipts from last month? From all the restaurants that you went to? And if there were some dispute, are you going to be able to find that receipt? Well, of course not, because we don't have nice filing systems for pieces of adding machine tape that come out of a point-of-sale terminal. On the other hand, here, it's all on your phone. It's very easy for you to access these receipts. So it's better for the merchant because now he can take your credit card in places he couldn't before. It's better for you because it's more convenient and gives you an accounting mechanism. So if it's better for you and better for me, it's going to become popular. And it has. The guys who started Square, I mean, it's such a simple idea. And the guys who started Square are very rich now. All right. So this is an elementary mechanism. This has been used in underdeveloped countries. It's the USSD wallet model. Unlike in so many abbreviations, US does not stand for United States, I'm happy to say. In this case, US stands for unstructured supplementary. Unstructured supplementary service data. So GSM is a second-generation phone technology. It's not heavily designed for the sending of large quantities of digital data. So using GSM, you're not watching movies or anything like that. You're not even going to view web pages typically. You could, but it's crude. On the other hand, with GSM, you could send texts. And so in addition to the voice channel, when you're talking on the phone, a lot of people forget that cell phones are phones. You can actually talk on them. Most people spend far more of their time going like this all day long than actually talking on the phone. But they are phones. You can talk. And in GSM, there was a side channel. In addition to the voice channel, there was a low data rate digital channel that you could use to send small amounts of data. It's a session-oriented real-time connection. So session-oriented means you start a session, it has a termination. When it's over, you can't transmit anything anymore. And the USSD side channel, which allowed you to send data along with a voice call, has been used for mobile payment. And there are a couple of mobile payment systems, this one in particular, M-Pesa, which it's a very clever name because it sounds like a Swahili word, and it's used in Kenya. And is a Swahili prefix. Okay? So when they say M-Pesa, all right, it means to them, it means mobile money because the M is an abbreviation for mobile. M-Pesa. Okay. There's another system, Voila Chocho, in Haiti, but it's not nearly as important because of the relative population difference between those countries. And so M-Pesa, what you do is you take cash, you go to an agent, you hand him the cash, and he engages in a transaction with the payment provider that essentially adds money to your account. Now, all of a sudden, you have, let's not call it a credit card because nobody's advancing you credit. It is, however, a debit card. It's a prepaid, your phone becomes now a prepaid debit card. You've already put the money into a bank or the payment provider, and they're going to allow you to draw that money wherever you go. You don't need cash anymore because you already spent the cash. And so you go to a merchant and you want to buy something, then all you have to do is key something into your phone and a USSD message is sent to your payment provider that deducts that amount from your account and credits the merchant with that account. Now all of a sudden, a country that had very little in the way of credit cards because it didn't have people wealthy enough to have credit cards, now all of a sudden everybody has the ability to make payments in ways they couldn't before. And so it's changed everything in African countries, particularly Kenya. All right, another model. Your credentials are stored in the cloud, not on the device. And that's true in Google Checkout, Amazon Payments, PayPal. I have a PayPal account, which I'll show you on Tuesday. And I have a number of payment credentials stored there. So I can pay people by PayPal, but I can also pay them by credit card using PayPal. So the credentials are stored on the cloud, not on the mobile device. In order to pay, the user is sent to a branded payment screen where branded means that it's merchant branded. So when you see, if you're at a merchant or you're walking around and you want to buy something and you're hundreds of miles away from the merchant, when you order on his website, when it comes time to pay, if you choose mobile payment, then all of a sudden a screen will pop up from the payment provider, not the merchant necessarily, the payment provider, but it's going to show the merchant's logo so you trust that you're really paying that merchant. And that's the way these things work. And then it asks you, authenticate yourself to us, which means you're going to have to type your password. And you don't want the merchant knowing your password. So you want the payment screen to come from the payment provider. So if you pay by PayPal, what happens is you're at the merchant, and all of a sudden your browser gets redirected to PayPal. You can safely type your password into that because only PayPal gets that. The merchant doesn't get that. Then the PayPal will communicate with the merchant, oh, he's paid, we're crediting you with the money, et cetera, et cetera. That's a lot like 3D Secure. 3D Secure, remember, at the moment the credit card transaction is taking place, you are redirected to your issuing bank. Your issuing bank asks you to key in your password, and the merchant doesn't get to see that. It's very similar to that. And in those situations, they're really very much like one another. Then the contactless model. In the contactless model, your credentials are actually on the mobile device. So there is a representation of your credit card information that's being stored on the phone or whatever payment mechanism you're using. And these are examples. Google Wallet, something called PayCloud, which uses ultrasonic sound to communicate. Turns out that the speaker on your cell phone can produce sounds that are too high in frequency for you to hear. If you could hear them, it would be very annoying. But they're way higher than you can hear. Like maybe dogs can hear them, but you can't. And so instead of using NFC, it just uses sound. It's very simple. You bring the thing near. There's a speaker on your phone, and there's a microphone on the merchant's device, and vice versa. And they talk to each other ultrasonically. It's not a massively popular technology. It's cute and clever, but it's not that popular. In Starbucks, you pay by scanning QR codes, and we'll talk about QR codes later. There's nothing magic about them. They're clever, but nothing magic. All right. The wonder of cell phones. how can my laptop communicate? My laptop has Wi-Fi, and my laptop has a, does it even have a, yeah, okay. It has an Ethernet jack here. So if I had wired internet in this room, I could plug in there. That's all. If it's either Wi-Fi or that. Now, the cell phone, which is much smaller and cheaper than that, has a vast array of communication mechanisms. So it has a bunch of antennas in there. In fact, it has 11 antennas. These are connected to various chips that support various communication protocols. There's something called ultra-wideband. You don't even know about it. NFC. There's an NFC chip in there. FM radio. 2G, 3G, 4G cellular. Most phones, or certainly these days, have both 3G and 4G. You know you got a GPS receiver in there. There's no GPS receiver in here. Okay. The only way that websites know where I am, and very often you get a little pop-up that says, will you allow your location to be tracked? The only way this thing knows where it is from the IP address. Now, the phone, however, knows where it is to within 10 feet anyway. Then other communications protocol, you got a Bluetooth chip in your phone also, and a wireless LAN chip, and DVB for digital video broadcasting to a handheld. That's how you can watch movies on a cell phone. So this little cell phone, and this is generations ago. The iPhone 10 looks much nicer than this. You've got a mass of different communications capabilities, so you can use different channels for communicating payment information that I can't do from the laptop. All right, so here's NFC. NFC operational modes. One thing that it can do is your cell phone can essentially pretend to be a chip card. The only difference being that there's not a physical reading of the chip on the card, because there's no card, but whatever information would be exchanged between the chip and the merchant's point-of-sale terminal is sent instead by NFC encrypted. And you know that's possible because you know you can do triple DES encryption, decryption in 70 microseconds. No problem. So having the phone is the same thing as having a chip card. And if you have chip and PIN, that's fine. You apply your cell phone to the merchant's point-of-sale terminal, and then an opportunity will come on his keyboard for you to key in your PIN if you want to. It's exactly the same thing as if you had the chip card. Except now you don't have, I have about 5 different chip cards in my wallet. It's a pain. I mean, look how thick this thing is. I have to carry it around, and I'm always worried about somebody stealing it. Now here, all the stuff, all the cards are on the one thing. They're all on the cell phone. If there is a peer-to-peer payment, and very few peer-to-peer payments take place offline. Usually the peer-to-peer payments require access to a central server like WeChat or PayPal. However, that's okay because the 2 different devices are internet connected, and so they can get access to after they do their peer-to-peer interaction, they can then go to the central server. And then reader mode is interesting. So this is referred to sometimes as service discovery. So sometimes merchants would like to offer you a variety of services, usually advertising. And so knowing who you are and having a profile of you, when you approach one of these things with your NFC phone, the device reads your phone and produces personalized information on the screen. It might present to you advertising that they believe you're interested in, or VIP offers or something like that. Ooh, you're a favored customer. You've spent this many thousands of dollars here this year. We want to offer you a 10% discount on such and such. Whereas the next person who shows up, they don't get the 10% discount. Now, there's technology that's used in retail stores in which the prices on the goods are not printed on the shelf, but they're LCD displays. And the LCD displays are controlled wirelessly from a computer in the back room of the store. And what that means is, if I have my cell phone with me, as I approach the shelf, a reader on the shelf can read my cell phone, find out who I am, and if I'm a favored customer, it can offer me a better price than it just offered the person who just showed up before me. Now, how do you know, if you get a lower price, how do you know when you get to the cash register that they're going to honor that price? Because you've got your cell phone with you at the cash register also. So this was a problem that merchants had, is that in most stores, there's this complicated process of putting price tags on things. And they have this machine that has gummed tape with prices. And you can see some people get very good at this. They can go like this, and within a fraction of a second, they can apply a price tag. The problem is once the price tag is there, you can't change the price so easily. If you want to change the price, you have to come along with another one and do it. And you can't offer this item at one price to him and a different price to her, because it's got one price on it. Now merchants have tremendously more flexibility by being able to offer different people different prices. I mean, some people are offended by this, but not the VIPs, because they like the discounts. All right. Now, security. Unlike in wired networks, many intruders can access wireless signals. Signal strength is an issue. This is very interesting. Here's an intruder. Here are this is the buyer, and this is the wireless router. And you're going over a wireless router or cell phone tower even, okay, in order to communicate with a merchant or to communicate with a payment provider. One of the things the intruder can do is overwhelm the signals of the router by using larger radio frequency energy. If the intensity of this beam is greater than the intensity of this beam, this is going to appear to be noise to your machine. This is difficult to do in a physical wiretap situation, but not so difficult to do in a wireless situation. And so the need for security is much greater in wireless than in other modes. All right. Now we can get down to payment systems. The mobile payment transaction involves more parties than a normal transaction. There's still a payment rectangle. The buyer, the seller, the buyer's bank, and the seller's bank. Can't get away from that. But there's also a mobile operator. Who is it who is providing you the cell phone service? There's also a platform manager. This is an outfit that is managing the platform that's on your device. So the platform has to do with how are the payment credentials stored, how are they recognized, what is the security. Then there's also the payment scheme, that is, what payment network is going to be used to make sure that money from the issuing bank ends up at the acquiring bank. If it's a credit card transaction, this is probably MasterCard or Visa or something like that. But we haven't told you about the mobile operator and the platform operator, how they work. So it's just more complicated than an ordinary credit card transaction. So here are the players. And I'm going to introduce one that you haven't probably heard of before. This is you. You have an NFC phone. So it's both a phone and an NFC device. In order for you to have phone service, you have a contract with a mobile network operator. So whatever the PCCW or whatever the phone company is that's providing you with your cell service. That's always referred to as the MNO, the mobile network operator. And there's always one, because otherwise you're not getting any phone service. Now, the merchant has a point of sale device that is capable of communicating with your NFC phone. The merchant has to communicate with the issuing financial institution that issued you your payment credentials. So if it's a credit card, that credit card was issued by some bank. And those credentials are stored on your phone somehow. How do they get there? And how do they get there in such a way that they can't be forged, they can't be altered, and that Eve can't find out what they are? And the way they get there is through the TSM. the Trusted Service Manager. The Trusted Service Manager is not a bank. Trusted Service Manager is not a payment provider. The Trusted Service Manager, TSM, is not even directly involved in any payment transactions. But they are involved in setting up your phone in such a way that it can be a participant in the payment process. Now, one of the amazing things about what the TSM does is that essentially everything it does can be done over the air. Why? Because when you want to add a payment credential to your cell phone, you don't want to have to go to some office building somewhere and present the phone and say, would you please put this credit card on my phone? You don't want to do that. So it all has to be done over the air. That's how people communicate with cell phones, is over the air. So the Trusted Service Manager has to communicate its security package to the mobile network operator, because that's the only way to reach your phone, is through the mobile network operator's network. Even, in fact, if you're roaming and you're not in range of your mobile network operator. So my mobile network operator in the States is Verizon. As far as I know, there's no Verizon here. So when I turn on my cell phone, I roam, which means there has to be a network that has a relationship with Verizon so that they will get paid. The bill shows up on my Verizon bill, but Verizon is going to have to render payment to whatever mobile network operator is servicing my phone right now. So what's going to happen is the TSM is going to communicate credentials securely to my mobile network operator, Verizon, which is going to communicate them to the Hong Kong mobile network operator that's servicing my phone, and then those credentials are going to get into my phone. So it's very complicated. It's much tougher than just doing things, through an ordinary internet connection. All right. So here's the ecosystem that we're talking about. There's a mobile network operator, sometimes called a telco, MNO or telco. And that mobile network operator has provisioned the phone with a SIM card so that you can make calls. In addition, there's a wallet app that's going to be installed on your phone that contains various payment credentials for you to use in mobile transactions. In addition, there's a proximity infrastructure that's supporting the NFC. All right. Now, the bank that issued you your credit card, when it creates your credentials, it's going to send them securely to a Trusted Service Manager who's a provider of services, not a provider of payment services, provider of provisioning services. The Trusted Service Manager sends credentials to an SEM, a Secure Element Manager, which manages the stuff that's stored on a secure element that's physically inside your phone. The secure element can take a number of forms. One of them is a SIM card, which all cell phones have, a secure SD card, or an embedded chip that was put in there when the phone was manufactured. And there are other ways of storing your credentials also, including cloud, which is not on the phone. Right? So all phones have secure elements. What does it mean for there to be a secure element on a phone? It means an element that normally the contents of which cannot be dumped and cannot be altered. You certainly don't want somebody to install a rogue app on your phone under the guise of it being, some kind of game or something, and goes and reads the secure element and says, oh, now I know the guy's credit card number, his bank identification number, and all that stuff. It has to be secure. Now, secure things don't get secure at birth. Okay, the security has to be maintained because anything you put in there has to be put in there in the proper encrypted fashion. All right. So here's another map of essentially the same thing. The MNO is the mobile network operator. The mobile network operator has a contract with a Trusted Service Manager. This SP is a service provider, for example, a bank. So the bank is the one that ultimately issues you your payment credentials. They have to be transformed into something that can be sent to the phone and stored on the secure element. The bank doesn't know what kind of phone you have. The bank doesn't care what kind of phone you have. The bank just issues you your payment credentials. It's somebody else's job to transform them into a format that can actually be installed on that particular brand of phone that's being operated by that particular mobile network operator. That's a complicated job that banks don't want to have anything to do with. You know how many different brands of cell phones there are in the world? It would be impossible for a bank to keep up with all of that, for every bank in the world to keep up with all of that. That's why they use these trusted service managers. Now, once the stuff gets into the secure element on your device, now it's available to be used in a point-of-sale transaction, and that only involves your phone, the merchant, the payment network, and your issuing bank. There. The trusted service manager is not involved in a payment transaction. They're only involved in setting up the phone so you can perform a payment transaction. So this black rectangle here, that's, well, quadrilateral, is the actual payment transaction is taking place between those parties, not the TSM. All right. Here's another map of it. So here are a bunch of service providers. Service providers are people that need to get paid. They've rendered service to you. For example, your bank has rendered the service to you of extending credit. Merchant has rendered the service to you of handing you some goods. Okay? These guys need to get paid. Now, you've got a phone. The phone has a secure element, which may take any of these forms. There's a secure element manager, the MNO's trusted service manager, which has provisioned your secure element. And that secure element is used to engage in communication with all these service providers when you use services. Your credentials are emitted from the secure element in such a way that the service provider can send them to his acquiring bank in order to get payment. Here's another map of largely the same thing. I'm trying to show it to you in different pictorial forms, and by repeating it, it should sink in. How to start. Okay, so here's a bank. The bank is issuing you a credit card. That credit card information is going to have to get to your phone. The way it gets to your phone is through, the bank has a contract with a trusted service manager. Why is there a contract? Because the bank has to trust the trusted service manager with the data that it sends to the TSM. The TSM also has a contract with the mobile network operator, so that credentials from the TSM can be passed over the air to your phone. And of course, there has to be a protocol, because when somebody tries remotely to rewrite data in your secure element, they have to know the protocol. Otherwise, any hacker could rewrite the stuff in the secure element. That's why it's secure. Okay? Now, once you're provisioned through the trusted service manager, now you can engage in a variety of transactions. You can engage in them over the internet, or you can engage in them at a physical store where you present your phone to an NFC reader. What's it reading? It's reading a request for payment credentials. That request is going to go to your wallet app, which, if authorized, is going to access the information in the secure element and pass that information to the merchant. And that ultimately is going to go through a network to your bank that issued you the card. So I'm omitting here the acquiring bank, the payment network, and all that. So it's not a direct connection. Okay? I think it's being absorbed now. The secure element. Secure element is a smart card chip that stores information, manages security, and provides a firewall between NFC applications and other elements in the phone. You don't want it so that I could walk up to you with a radio wand and start reading all the stuff in the secure element. You don't want that. You only want authorized readers to read what's in the secure element, not an arbitrary NFC reader. So it provides a firewall between these applications and other elements in the phone. You don't want a game app to be reading your payment credentials on a secure element and transmitting them over the internet to the game company. You don't want that. So you need a firewall to protect against that. These two, 1 and 2, SIM cards and micro SD cards are removable. You know that. You open up the back of your phone, you can take the card out. Third, the embedded chip is not removable. It's wired into the phone with solder. It's there when the phone is manufactured. These abbreviations are useful. SIM stands for Subscriber Identity Module. You know, you can take your SIM card and move it into a different phone, and all of a sudden that phone has your phone number. If somebody calls you, the other phone will ring. Okay? It's a brilliant thing. UICC stands for Universal Integrated Circuit Card. It's a kind of card that obeys a certain standard. So all cell phones know how to read and write UICCs. All right. The secure elements can be physically packaged, again, in these different ways. There can be a chip, and if you look at your SIM card, it's got that little pattern on it. It's just like a chip on a credit card. SIM cards, embedded chips, are micro SDs. Now, what's on them? What's on them is various kinds. So EMV, if you remember, stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, Visa. It's a tripartite group where they all got together for common standards. That's what EMV means. There's an EMV application, a wallet. There's EMV data, which permits communication with EMV parties. And there are various encryption keys on there that are used to secure the data, so that not only can't Eve read it, but the issuing bank knows that the data is legitimate. So here's a UICC card. It's the most widespread secure element. This one's a Java card, so it's got a full Java V virtual machine on it. Each service provider, anybody who's provided to you a credit card, for example, is going to have his own secure area on this chip. That means that if you have a MasterCard from one bank and a MasterCard from another bank, Bank 1 cannot access Bank 2's information on your card, even though they're both part of the MasterCard network. So I have multiple MasterCards and multiple Visas. They're mutually unreadable to one another. The UICC is remotely manageable, and it's remotely manageable through the Trusted Service Manager. The Trusted Service Manager can send messages to your card that will cause a rewriting of all this stuff. Other people can't do it. Your issuing bank can't do it. The mobile network operator can't do it, because the Trusted Service Manager is the only one who has the necessary keys, because he provisioned the card in the first place. Right? There you go. And it's got multiple interfaces. It understands USB, for example. All right. So what do Trusted Service Managers do? So these are service providers. They use a Trusted Service Manager who communicates with the MNO in order to get information to your phone. This is misleading. This arrow here is really a composition of those two arrows. The TSM doesn't have any radio towers. He doesn't directly communicate with your phone. He goes through the mobile network operator to communicate with your phone. It's a single trusted entity for both the MNO and the service providers. It securely distributes and personalizes the service provider app that's on your phone. So if you have a MasterCard, there's a MasterCard app on your phone. That is distributed and personalized to you by the TSM and sent over the air to your phone. It's OTA personalization over the air. The Trusted Service Manager verifies the user's device and SE capabilities when it does the provisioning. So it finds out what kind of cell phone you have, so it knows exactly what to put on the secure element. It finds out what kind of secure element you have, etc. But again, it's not involved in the payment transaction. It's only in the provisioning. And it manages the life cycle of the apps. So if MasterCard comes out with an update to the MasterCard wallet or something, or Amazon or WeChat, whatever the wallet is, your app on your phone gets updated through the TSM. A lot of trust in the TSM. Okay? There's another map. I'm showing you the same thing over and over again, but visually different. And some of you will respond well to one visualization of it, and some to a different visualization of it. So here we have a bank. Here we have the Trusted Service Manager. Here we have various phone carriers. And here we have various service providers that are providing goods, airline tickets, etc. What the Trusted Service Manager does is it intermediates among all of these parties to the extent that modifications to the SE, to the secure element, are necessary. Anything that's changing in the secure element is going through the Trusted Service Manager. How do you install a secure NFC app? The Trusted Service Manager installs the Trusted NFC app over the air. Comes from the TSM, goes onto your phone. It creates a Trusted Service Manager security domain, TSD, on the phone. So it grabs some area of the secure element for this particular app. It says, aha, he wants to put in the MasterCard PayPass app, which is used for NFC payment as the equivalent of your MasterCard. So I need this many bytes for that. I'm going to grab that area on the secure element, and then I'm going to download an applet, because on the UICC card, the secure element has a full Java virtual machine. And so a Java applet can be downloaded by the TSM into the trusted security domain and then personalized. So you can put your name on it, if you want to see the last 4 digits of your credit card number, your whatever. It's personalized. And then it installs a service provider midlet. A midlet is an app that knows the necessary keys to access the mobile information device profile on your phone. Not any app is able to do that, but the midlet does. Why? Because there's a contract between the TSM and the mobile provider. The mobile provider tells the TSM what it needs to do to access your device profile. From then on, the TSM is able to manage the life cycle of the app. It can update the app. It can deactivate it. If the bank says, he's not a customer anymore, get rid of the app, the next time you turn your phone on, your app is going to vanish, because the Trusted Service Manager will get rid of it. But remember, the TSM is not part of the payment transaction. He does not have to be online at the time. He doesn't get any information about any of your payments. Okay. I think we'll do this, and then we'll take a break. So this is a view of the overall process, but this writing is too small for us to go through. So I've blown up this one separately from that one. Gemalto is a Trusted Service Manager. Gemalto also makes phone chips. Okay. So here's the key ceremony. Sounds like the tea ceremony. It's the key ceremony. A one-time process that enables key management. Banks and Gemalto exchange keys, enabling a secure connection for data file delivery. So if you have an issuing bank that's going to issue a credit card, that issuing bank tells the Trusted Service Manager what the necessary keys should be in order to access the credit card information for that bank on your phone. They don't get the keys for the other bank. Trusted Service Manager gets them all, but one bank does not get the keys for another bank. The keys are produced and encrypted inside a hardware security module. So it's very similar to what I showed you last time on how the chips in your credit cards are produced. Remember, there's a hardware service module. The hardware security module generates keys that no human being ever sees. And those keys are used to encrypt data, and they're also sent over to a manufacturing machine that manufactures the card, and no human ever sees this. So the keys are produced and encrypted inside the HSM hardware security module. So, produced and encrypted. Remember, there's a key transport key. Key transport key is a symmetric key that's used to encrypt other keys. Otherwise, you couldn't send the keys securely, right? So it generates the keys and encrypts the keys. Different parts of the keys are managed by different people, so there's never any. The participation of 2 people is required in order to create these keys, and one guy does not know the data that the other guy has. At every stage of the process, many secret keys are used to transport data securely between the bank and Gemalto. I showed you that last time when we did stored value cards. I showed you how the chips were made, and there are all these different keys. There's the key transport key, the data transport key, etc. An encrypted data file is produced. That's a secure package that's sent by the bank to Gemalto, Trusted Service Manager. Where do the keys go? No human being reads them. They go directly into a hardware security module maintained by Gemalto. So this can be sent over the internet, encrypted with SSL, so it's multiply encrypted. Even if you decrypted it, it would still be encrypted, right? And then that goes right into the hardware security module at Gemalto, where the decryption occurs. And those keys are used by hardware in order to create the software that's going to be downloaded to the security module on your machine. So again, different secret keys transport data securely at every stage within Gemalto as well as within the bank. Okay? Now, a secure channel is created so that data can be securely sent back and forth between Gemalto and the banks. And so, number two, this is the mirroring of this process. It's the undoing of this process at Gemalto. So Gemalto and the bank can communicate very securely. All right, now the next phase. Number three, generating accounts. Banks generate cardholder account data. So for example, you've just applied for a credit card, they granted you a credit card, and they're going to create secure data for your secure element using a hardware security module. So they're going to key in some information. They're going to key in your name and your account number, expiration date, whatever it is. And then all kinds of secure encrypted stuff is going to be generated from that. So accounts are produced including name, account number, and secret unique keys which no human being ever finds out. Then, because there's a secure channel between the bank and Gemalto, Gemalto takes the contactless payment account data, your, for example, MasterCard PayPass credit card number, and converts it into an NFC data package formatted for the secure element in your particular cell phone. Now, this thing then is going to, the process is now, how is Gemalto going to get that stuff into your phone? Acting as the trusted service manager, Gemalto prepares the package for download to the phone. It sends this to its own hardware security module. Then it goes to a Gemalto key management system. So the trusted service manager uses master seed keys in a KMS to derive unique keys for specific SIM UICC cards. So remember, your SIM card's already been provisioned. There are some secret keys in there that Gemalto can use to communicate with your phone. All that stuff is encrypted and transferred over the air. So Gemalto sends the package to your mobile network operator along with your telephone number. Your mobile network operator then sends the package to your particular telephone. The UICC SIM handset, that's your phone, checks the keys to confirm the data is going to the correct cell phone, that there wasn't some mistake, which ensures that when the user's data is finally put into the handset, the bank and MNO will know that it's authentic and delivered to the account owner. Only then is it decrypted and installed on the phone. And of course, it's decrypted on the phone and installed on the phone. Mobile subscribers cannot use their bank card on their mobile device. I'm not sure why it says that there. All right, now, obviously this is all secure, and that Eve is not able to do anything here, hackers are not able to do anything here. The question is, once this is all installed on your phone, how does the bank or the credit card network authenticate you? How do they know when you engage in a transaction that it's really you? Well, the one thing that they certainly know is that it's your phone. What they don't know is whether your phone has been stolen. So if I pick up your phone and I try to engage in these transactions, I might be able to authenticate myself as you. And that's why some form of PIN is necessary in order for you to invoke the payment app. So that somebody who picks up your phone or picks it out of your pocket and starts to, gets the payment app, it says, type PIN. Oh, I don't know the PIN. I can't do that. But once you have authenticated yourself to your phone with the PIN, the phone is then completely self-authenticating to all of the payment parties. Completely unlike my laptop. There's absolutely nothing self-authenticating about my laptop. For example, maybe they can ask me for my username and password. No, okay. But how do they know that I haven't altered the software that's on the machine? They don't know that. There's no secure element on my machine. Any hacker can change anything on a laptop. Can't do it on a cell phone. And so this is one of the reasons that the cost of these transactions is much lower. Has to do with the tremendous volume of these transactions, and also the amortization of the infrastructure cost over a very large number of devices makes the cost per device much lower. Okay, time for a break, and then we'll talk about tokenization.